The cool thing is you can, if you are in a place with lots of meteors, you could disable all of your meteor lasers, have them go into one dome, cancel all the oxygen supplies, and then see them slowly suffer. And then there'll be meteors crashing onto the dome and make a hole in your dome, and they suffocate in torture.
Step 1 is done.
And with that, we are on Death Diary number 3. Today we're going to be talking about domes, the structures that our colonists are going to be living in Mars, on Mars even. And it's rather curious. The Death Diary itself is focusing quite a lot on how the domes themselves are being constructed and how all these things work. But what I find really curious is further way down is what is described regarding the population and what you can do with them. So building the utopian domes on Mars, obviously the red wastes are harsh, and you need to build yourself some sort of structure which is somewhat retrofuturistic, let's be honest. Once on Mars, if we actually get there at some point, we'll most likely be living on the ground. So these giant perplex glass domes are most likely not the most optimal way of living, especially considering the harsh environment involved. But considering this is a more optimistic approach to building your colony on Mars, we're gonna go with domes. Now, domes are very expensive, apparently. They cost a lot of resources to build, and generally you will be starting to build your first one in your first solar cycle. So the game is split up in several phases, one phase being the construction phase, where 12 settlers or initial crew will land, and they will be on the planet for 10 solar cycles, which are solts and or days, considering Mars has a slightly larger orbit than Earth, to say the least. Basically, the way time is calculated is by Earth days, which are referred to as sols. Now, after 10 sol days, one sol day at normal speed takes 12 minutes, by the way, so if you play at normal speed, it takes 2 hours to get to the stage, but you can squeeze that down to 30 minutes. Your first real colonist will arrive. Now, at this point, you will have all your infrastructure, or at least your base infrastructure, set up for them to be able to live underneath the dome. And this is not a reference to that pretty ghastly Stephen King adaptation TV show I was not a fan of that, let's put it that way. Anyway, you have several types of domes. You have residential domes, research domes, etc. And all of them are designed to bring optimal living conditions for your colonists on the ground. Now, the center dome, the center of the dome is called a spire, and most domes can only have a single spire. Now, in this case, they are referring to most domes. We've seen some pictures of larger domes already that are not semicircles, or at least semi-spheres, that are more oval shaped, so maybe we'll see more spires. But basically, they are specialization buildings that define the dome. So you can have, for instance, a garden or a tree farm or something along those lines, or as they so kindly showed in the live stream from yesterday, a mind control thing, so you can change the specifications of your colonists. Now, with the domes out of the way, let's go and talk at something a little bit more interesting that I saw. So, once you have decided that you need more colonists, you can go and select them from Earth. And this is kind of cool because you can select them by their traits. These can be negative, these can be positive, this can be amazing. You can select by age category. So in theory, you could have a colony full of children on Mars. And also, if you are done with a certain population, let's say a person ages over the age of 60, they are no longer capable of working and need to be taken care of. As one of the producers so kindly mentioned earlier on, let's build a Logan's Run type dome where all the elderly go and then cut off the oxygen supply, because clearly that's how we deal with the population on Mars once they are done. Now everybody has a trait. We got survivors, we have nerds, hypochondriacs, chronic conditions. There can be gurus, and those are additional traits on top of the specialization of the colonists to begin with. So you have botanists, you have geologists, you have scientists, etc., just general workers, and all can have these traits, and they can also breed with each other to create new traits. So, are you ready for space eugenics? Because clearly that is going to be what's happening here. If you thought The Sims had endless potential for torturing your population, or at least the people that live in the house, my god, this game has so much opportunity for it already. It is actually kind of ridiculous, and I'm looking forward to it. Traits themselves are obviously not nearly as in-depth as they are in Crusader Kings, where traits are the core system of the game to begin with, but still, having some of these mixed together could be actually really, really cool. In addition, you can, for instance, have idiots. You can have convicts. Hell, you can build a space prison at this point and basically work them in the mines. You can have, like I said, idiots that cause catastrophic malfunctions that somehow pop up. And you're going to need to manage all of these people and making sure that they don't do stupid things, and make sure that they may or may not be rehabilitated. Hell, you can even have a celebrity on Mars, and apparently this is going to allow you to get additional funding from the company that sends you up into space. Now, we haven't really discussed this, but it looks like that we're going to be having organizations that will fund your expedition. This can be countries, this can be corporations. Hell, we have even seen some stuff about churches, which is kind of cool. Also, traits mean that certain citizens have certain requirements. For instance, if certain scientists may or may not be gamblers, which means that you will need to set up space casinos, basically, bingo, etc. Who needs TV and internet and space when you can gamble? And if they lose, well, then the morale is hit and stuff like that. So it looks like we're going to be dealing with, in addition to managing the infrastructure of a colony, also the personalities of the people on the ground. Now, at the start of the game, when you have, say, 40 colonists, this is going to be far more labor-intensive than in the late game, where you have over 10,000 colonists, and you're starting to work on more of a macro level. To quote the Dev Diary, if you want to create a dome populated with fit middle-aged survivors and sexy nerds, you can do it. That sounds absolutely delightful. And finally, before we sign off for today, it looks like we have pinned down a release area for next year. Initially, it was set to 2018. It looks like this has now been focused down a little bit. Surviving Mars 1.0 will be released in spring 2018. That's somewhere within the next 3 months. I'm really looking forward to this. This is one of the games that is really catching my eye, and I'm really looking forward to see what we can do. We're going to be having another Dev Diary sometime in January. The team is probably out on vacation already, ready for Christmas, etc. And next time we're going to be talking about mysteries on Mars. Things are afoot, and maybe they will push humanity to something fresh and something new. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and take good care of yourselves and each other.